Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel. Today, we're getting back to the jet boat project. Now, I've neglected this boat for over a year. I think the last time I even had the tarp off of it was last year when we kicked a raccoon out. Now, I did do a few things with this boat over the past year, although not so directly. That brings me to our sponsor for this video, Lithium, who has provided me with a lithium-ion battery pack. I was about to purchase a traditional deep-cycle lead-acid battery to use for the house system on this boat. That's the electrical system that runs the lights, the radios, the electronics, all the stuff other than the engine. Generally, on a slightly larger boat like this, you want to keep two battery systems, one dedicated to starting the engine, and one for everything else. That way, if we're out camping in the boat and forget to turn the lights off at night, we're not left with a dead battery in the morning. Now, Lithium's battery may look like a traditional deep cycle battery, or even like a regular car battery. This is actually a LiFePO4 or lithium iron polymer battery, so this is modern technology, not your old 1920s lead acid. It's essentially the same thing you'd see in a mobile charging pack or even your cell phone battery, but it's in this standardized case that looks like and feels like a traditional deep cycle battery. So it's ready to be popped into your boat, your RV, your off-grid cabin, anywhere that you need convenient power with a modern twist. It even comes with Bluetooth built right into the battery here. Just like a traditional deep cycle battery, you can connect this in both series and parallel operation. So you could use this as a golf cart battery, you could use it in a battery bank in a larger boat or a house. There are all kinds of possibilities. Now, one slight difference with these modern batteries is the charging. Lithium's manual does recommend that you use a lithium-ion specific, LiFePO4 specific charger. Since I'm using this in a vehicle, I did ask Lithium if it could be charged with an alternator, and they said that should be fine. Now, the battery itself has no inputs, outputs, or interface other than the contacts, but Lithium has this cool little Bluetooth app where you can monitor the battery statistics and all the information right on your phone. We can look at voltage, current, battery cycles, capacity, all kinds of detailed information about the battery cells. And after we've charged this a few times, we can get a history graph of the current, the voltage, the capacity, the temperature. This has a bunch of cool information in it. Now that my Lithium battery is fully charged, we're going to pop it into the boat and hook up some systems to it. So I have a spot right here by the helm where the battery can live in this little compartment. And this is actually another benefit of having a lithium polymer battery. Because there's no liquid in here like a traditional lead acid battery, you can mount this in any orientation. So if it's a little too big to fit upright in our battery box, we can just lay it on the side with no adverse effects. Now we can run all of our non-critical boat accessories like the cabin lights, electronics like our marine radio, or the fish finder, although this one's a bit of an antique and I'm planning on upgrading to something newer. I already have some charging outlets spread around the boat, such as this one at the helm station, which features the old-style cigarette plug as well as USB, and another one here in the cabin. As you can see, it's all lit up and ready to go. Now, with a traditional lead-acid deep-cycle battery, you never quite know how much capacity is left in there, and I don't even know if my little amp gauge works on the boat dashboard. Fortunately, with the Lithium pack, we don't have that problem anymore. We've got this handy-dandy Android dashboard where we can check the battery status right on the phone, or since I already have an Android tablet for GPS navigation on the boat, I can check on the battery right from there as well. If I were doing this on a larger scale, I'd probably set up a dedicated tablet or other Android device to keep track of my power system. So if we were using this at a cabin or on a larger boat or an RV, we could have a dashboard screen showing us all the stats about our battery system. Now, we still have a lot of work to do this summer before we're ready to get this boat out cruising, out on some lakes, out on the local rivers, doing any overnight trips. But once we're ready for that, this Lithium battery is going to give us a modern, efficient, and easily monitored way to have 12-volt power for all of our gadgets. So when we're camping overnight, we can have lights, we can have phones, we can have a stereo system, we can even watch TV if we wanted out here. I'm really looking forward to trying it out some more. If I haven't mentioned the specs yet on the Lithium battery, it's a 12-volt, 100 amp hour, 1280 watt-hour battery with a built-in 200 amp BMS, or battery management system. And you can daisy chain 4 batteries in series or 4 batteries in parallel for over 19,000 watt-hours of energy. They mention that it's a detachable body design where you can replace battery cells or the battery management system as needed. I actually got curious about what's inside this Lithium unit, so I took the top cover off. So you just take out these 4 Phillips screws, you can pop the top off, and there's what's inside of this thing. So yeah, everything's pretty modular. That's actually really cool. They've gone ahead and thought this through made it user serviceable, which I think is awesome. So many electronics these days are just anonymous beige boxes that the user is not supposed to get into. But this thing lets you get in there and swap things around if you need to, which is very nice. Quick midwinter update on the jet boat project. As I film this, it is December, and we've just received our replacement Berkely jet parts from JB Performance out in California. We also have a less practical, but just as fun addition, a train horn. So if you remember the trials and tribulations of the jet boat so far, we had that Berkely unit all apart. We discovered that the prior owner had some sort of religious conviction against lubrication and torque and bearings, so everything was all screwed up in there and broken. So I contacted Jim at JB Performance, and he has sent me a drive shaft with bearing installed and a replacement bowl. Obviously it isn't new, but it is in better shape than my old one. And he's pressed in the seals for me, so that's a step I don't have to do when I go to install this. Now these are not easy parts to find in the Midwest. Jet boating just isn't a big thing around here, and brand new parts would have cost me more than I paid for the entire boat. So finding somebody with used parts for sale at a reasonable rate was really cool, and a big thanks to Jim out in California. I'll put his information down in the description, so if anybody out there is looking for Berkely jet parts, I highly recommend him. So now that we have all those new and replacement parts, rebuilt parts, I think we're finally ready to get the tarp off, get the boat opened up, and actually start working on it, try to get it out on the water this summer. We didn't have it out at all last year. I had it on my to-do list to get this boat ready for summer back in May, and it's now July 1st, so we're way behind schedule on this thing. So it's potentially going to be fall before we get this on the water. That tarp is actually still in decent shape after a couple years. This was the most expensive tarp I could find at Menards. If I find a name on it, I'll let you know what the brand is. The original 1960s boat cover for this thing is not doing as well. It looks like the air cleaner for the engine is poked right through it. And I'm seeing some raccoon fur on top of there, so we might have friends in the boat again. Well, here it is, emerging from slumber, our 1964 Dorsett Catalina jet boat. My little PVC brace or frame here that I made for the cover has all collapsed, so I'll probably have to redo that. So after I ordered those parts from Performance Jet, I also happened to find another Berkely jet on Craigslist. Pretty cheap, so I grabbed that as well. We've got some more parts of it in here. Kind of a bunch of junk just hoarded in the back of the garage. So yeah, we've basically got two jet units now, and the new starter, we've got an antenna, so we'll have to pull all that out and see what we actually use. As you may have seen in some prior videos, the bowl on my existing jet had some bad bearings, probably bad bearing races. Everything was kind of screwed up in there. It would be really handy to have some kind of a tool cart or a rolling rack to move all the boat stuff around. Into the garage, out of the garage, into the boat, especially if it's going to rain on it. I was thinking some kind of a wire rack on casters, and then I remembered...
But I'd rather just dump it in there.
Free shopping cart. I take really good care of all my vehicles. There are no scratches at all in this car. And this is still not the dumbest thing I've hauled on here. So yeah, we've still got that thing taking up space in the garage, and I haven't put an engine on it or built a rocket motor for it or anything yet. So for now, we might as well use it as a tool cart. I've got a bunch of parts like gaskets and whatnot. This one looks like it's already broken. I think this is a new one, but I'm gonna have to order another one again. We've got some binoculars. We've got an Axeman CB radio, antenna for that, some other parts, pieces, gaskets, plugs. I have no idea what these are parts for. This is the problem with letting a boat project like this sit for a year. You have all the parts you need, maybe, but you don't remember what they go to anymore. Now this right here might be my favorite thing about the boat so far that I picked up at an auction. Yeah, that goes right along with my pirate flag collection. Now I have to admit, I am not looking forward to taking this jet drive apart again and then putting it all back together and trying to get it right, trying to get everything lined up, trying to get everything waterproof and sealed correctly, but I need to just stop stalling and actually do it. Alrighty, after a whole lot of work, a few hours of wrenching, we've got it back to where we were last year. So you can see our problem here with the original drive shaft is just gouged out. It's just worn away in a couple spots here. There's water down in there, so yeah, this is terrible. There's no lubricating oil in there, it's just water. That shaft is just grinding away in there. And these seals are just falling apart. These are the new seals that I put in last year, and they're already shot just because everything's so beat up in here, everything's wearing away. We have all the parts we've removed so far semi-organized in the shopping cart here. The bowl up in the top is probably trash because that is too worn out to reuse, but I think we can still reuse that O-ring. We can still use the steering assembly, the reversing cup. I think we can still use the transom mount. We are going to need a new transom mount gasket. And then those bolts we may or may not be able to reuse. Some of those ended up being kind of rusty, so we might have to find some stainless ones. But this shopping cart idea is turning out to be pretty handy for organizing all our parts and moving it in and out of the garage. So far in 2023, I have a quarter of one item on the to-do list done. Plus, we've started adding things to page 2 of the to-do list. All right, it's a new weekend and we're continuing taking apart the jet drive. Right now, I'm trying to get the impeller off of here, and then I think we have to get the entire inside half of the jet unit unmounted and out of the boat so we can get the shaft out. We don't necessarily have to do it in that order, but I think it's going to be easier to get the impeller off while it's still attached to the engine. It's pretty windy today, so we might or might not get a lot of footage if there's just wind noise. Just like last weekend, I'm setting up a GoPro so I can film my operations here. Not so much for the channel, although I might throw some clips in, but mostly so I can see what I did. So when I go back to this to reassemble it in a couple weeks or a month, I can actually see what each step was and try to reverse the order of operations. Otherwise, I won't remember how anything went in there. And I'm supposed to use a special torque tool for this nut on the impeller. I don't have that. I don't want to pay the $1,000 for that tool, so we're going to try our best to make do with what we've got and hope that it works. Well, I think I'm just turning over the engine at this point. I need some way to lock the shaft so I can have a chance of getting that nut off of there. Since the old shaft is already ruined and we're taking it out, I'm just going to try a regular antique pipe wrench to hold it in place. I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but this is what we have in the shop. Well, this seems like a good way to break some tools. Good thing I buy all my tools for $1 at estate sales. So far, I'm getting nowhere getting that impeller nut off of there. We're just ruining tools. So we might just have to take the entire pump unit out of the boat, take it over to somebody with a real mechanic shop with some impact tools or torches or something who can get that nut off of there, get that shaft out of there, and then we have a chance of getting the replacement shaft back in place. There's so much nonsense going on with this thing that I had to find myself another rolly cart to go along with my professional mechanics shopping cart just to hold all the tools and parts and whatnot. If I did this right, which is always a big if, I should be able to pop the whole assembly here off of the suction piece and out of the boat. I do have to do a little bit of prying, so instead of using a screwdriver like normal, I've got my official Axeman 295 miniature crowbar. So we're gonna give that a shot, see if we can get this out of the boat. Actually, I think I missed a bolt or two hiding back in here. So on the inside of the boat, on the engine, nothing was torqued down. Everything was loose, everything was rattling around in there. On the outside of the boat, on the jet drive, everything is over-torqued, glued in place, siliconed in place, will not budge. So right now, we've got all the bolts loose on the drive unit. We're trying to free it from the suction piece, and it is siliconed on there so hard that I'm actually having to jack up the back end of this unit to try to separate it from the rest of the boat. Yeah, I hope I don't break anything else on this thing. I can't believe how well attached this is with apparently just silicone. I need to find out what brand of silicone this is. Okay, that took way too much messing around, but I think we have this thing broken free now. Yeah, we're calling that a success, even though at the moment we have this giant hole in the boat. But for once, that's what we actually want. Yeah, we've got all this space in here. Next we can try to work on all this dodgy wiring. Now I still kind of want to get this cover off and look at the flywheel because as I may have said earlier, the starter motor was just not torqued down, was kind of rattling around loose in there, chewing up the flywheel. And I know it's not called a flywheel, it's something else in the manual, but I can never remember what the real name for it is, so we're calling it a flywheel. Anyway, the giant gear in here with all the teeth that's used to start it may or may not need to be replaced, but I'm not sure if we can get this plate off without unmounting the engine from the frame of the boat. So yeah, not quite sure what to do with that yet. Now in a previous video, I kind of laughed at the prior owner for fitting a household plumbing valve onto the cooling water intake off of the Berkely jet. But I was looking at some official CP performance videos and they have this too. So apparently this regular old plumbing valve was original Berkely equipment. Now it's definitely full of sand and it's grinding like crazy. So I think while we've got all this out of here, we're gonna go ahead and replace some or all of this plumbing assembly for the coolant intake. All right, since I cannot figure out how to get the shaft out of this drive unit, we've taken it off. We're taking it over to a friend who has a better shop than I do, more skills than I do, and maybe some bigger hammers than I do. And I think he's gonna be able to get that shaft out of there so we can replace it. So this has been taking a lot longer than I thought. I mean, it always does. I've been basically working on this part 10 video all year so far, half of 2023, and the boat still hasn't left the yard. It did get the tarp off of it once or twice, but we're not much closer to getting it out on the water. I'm still hopeful that we'll get it out this year, but we'll have to see what happens. I think with the amount of content that I've got so far, the amount of messing around, that is gonna have to wait until potentially part 11, because again, we're not gonna get this out anytime this month. Maybe we'll get it out next month, but we have a lot more work to do. So I'm gonna wrap this video up. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for hopefully another out on the water test run of the Dorsett Catalina jet boat, and we'll see you next time. Again, I'd like to thank Lithium for sponsoring this video, and I'm looking forward to trying out their battery pack on the water this summer.